Kupo Moogles, TheShwantz27 here to recap Week 2 of the Battlegrounds event for the Final Fantasy VI Worlds Collide community. At the start of the week, the Empire controlled their 3 territories on the southern continent, plus picked up Dragon's Neck from the prior week in the west. Meanwhile, the returners controlled their 3 territories in the north, along with capturing both Thamasa and the Veldt in the east. Since one territory from the prior week must be selected for the subsequent week, we had a repeat battle in the Veldt, where the top 8 returner times squared off against the top 6 Empire runners. Also up for grabs were the areas Doma's in the east and Zozo in the west. Let's recap the flag set for the Veldt prior to discussing the individual seed. It had a Kefka unlock at the standard 6 characters, 9 Espers, but Kefka Tower skip required 4 dragons, and there were a plethora of rewards for killing 3 dragons, including learning 50 rages and plus 20 to the magic power, speed, and strength stats, which is a warm welcome due to our 50% to 90% stat nerf to start. But these dragons did not conform to the scaling of the seed, so they would be a difficult task to take unless you were already in the high 20s in terms of levels. Completing the Serpent Trench rewarded dried meat for the Gao check. However, bosses, enemies, and dragons got plus 10 levels at the start of the seed, where enemy scaling was based on bosses plus dragons times 3, maxing out at 50. You'd have a 3 character start without equipment or GP, so this meant more looting for both gear and things to sell at the shop for consumables. Commands are random unique, no possess, shock, magitech, x-magic, or control. Espers taught less spells at 1 to 4, chests were better at shuffle plus 35% random, with shops less helpful at shuffle plus 10% random without access to rods or super balls, although the Coliseum did have a buff with 120 visible rewards. The no free progression setting was applied, so we got some high tier items out of our starting characters: GP Rain Celeste with a flame shield at South Figaro prisoner spot, and an experience egg out of the collapsing house courtesy of Capture Sabin. Since we also had slot tools Gao, we were able to get dried meat after the Serpent Trench check for the Raiden Esper, which dumped you out at World of Balance Nikea, where there were EXP eggs for sale in case you missed that other one. Sorry kid, you're not a loser this seed after all. Loot was generous in the normal spots with the Ragnarok and the North Shed drill in the returners hideout for Gao, and a pair of ice shields that gave us enough to start the seed. Early access to tier 3 elemental spells with Fire and Bolt 3, plus not fighting any bosses in the first few checks with Imperial Camp after the Gao stuff meant that enemies didn't really scale up, and that made early game bosses a pushover. However, it wasn't until runners went to the Opera House Disruption where they found their 4th character Umaro, and the seed continued its linearity with Morph Mog at the Yeti Cave and Edgar at Moogle Defense for our 6th character, and by then we already had 9 Espers through exhausting most other checks, including a Magimaster at Kefka at Narsh, which was a struggle having to rely on GP Rain and Drill. Although stats were nerfed by the time we got our characters and thus our Kefka unlock requirements, the EXP eggs boosted up so many levels that some runners did not do those aforementioned dragons to get that 3 dragon objective, while others decided that they were worth it for the stat boost and skip. Those that did dragons and didn't get one shot by an opening quake to Dirt Dragon at the top of Narsh were rewarded with even more goodies like an Illumina, Valiant Knife, and Offering, but we're still missing decent armor for a good contingent of our team, which caused problems in the first couple of tiers of Final Kefka, having to start sans equipment in this seed. Even though they needed 2 more times to count against their total, the returners were able to hold on to Veldt with a time of 1:26.42 versus 1:27.24, having 15 of the top 19 times, with ranks 20 and 21 rounding out the top 6 for the Empire, who actually had the gold and bronze medal spot this week with Gar and Falcon hit respectively, with Boo getting 2nd overall for the returners. With the returners hanging on to the Veldt, could they gain control of a 3rd territory to open up the Empire's shores for attack? Well, the other area in the east was Doma, which had a standard 6 character 9 Esper Kefka unlock with a Kefka Tower skip at 12 bosses. So this incentivizes checks like Magitech Factory and Floating Continent with 4 bosses, as well as Moblas with 2 bosses. We'd learn all 8 sword techs by going through the Dream Awaken check, and we started out with a plus 15 strength to go along with 3 characters, a standard stat spread, double the cash at 10,000 GP, and 3 Phoenix Downs. Those 3, however, would be the only ones that we'd be getting for the entire seed, as this one has the permadeath flag on, so there's no other way to bring back characters. Thus, Life 3, and by extension the Phoenix Esper summon, become even more important. There are lots of vanilla options in this one with commands, Esper spells, bonuses, and MP. Enemy level, HP, and MP scaling was slightly higher than usual at 2.5 times characters plus Espers plus dragons, topping out at a max of 50, but the ability scaling is off, so vanilla boss scripts applied here. Another wrinkle in this flag set is the 0% escapable non-boss fight, so make sure you save before doing a grind fight and watch out for those forced encounter checks. Chests at shuffle plus 50% random and shops at shuffle plus 30% random with slightly lower prices. However, there were no rods, balls, experience eggs, or illuminas, as well as equipment at an original plus 66% random instead of the usual 33, meant that looting and shopping would be rewarding as lots of characters could wear lots of different pieces of gear. Same with the free checks and high tier items with the no free characters and Esper's flag. YNPC is set to remove, meaning sequence breaks are possible with this flag set, including getting a crack at the curse shield right away, although it was 13 battles in this seed, and a larger visible Coliseum reward pool enticed runners over to it. Those that did visit were rewarded with experience eggs for leather hats, which was a good idea with a Umaro, Terra, and Realm start. This also meant a quick visit to Sealed Gate Cave, netting Marvel shoes at the end with an ice shield in the loot in between, making the Valiant Knife the easy choice at the out of logic Narsh weapon shop instead of more kicks, and a cheap World of Balance to Zen Thief at about 3,000-ish GP, and it was actually 4 digits in World of Ruin for Bismarck, which did have a Strength plus 2 Esper bonus on it as it does in the vanilla game. If you didn't do the Sealed Gate Ninja pulldown, grind fights were difficult to come by at multiple places around the world, including unrunnable in Tangier for some, or difficult Soul Dancer mobs for others on the Leet River. However, that check also rewarded Fenrir for calmness protection if you didn't keep Terra around, who learned Life 3 naturally. Edgar with Jump was in Owzer's Mansion, along with a Valiant Knife Heir to the Throne if you didn't get the out of logic one in the Narsh weapon shop, and sequence breaking couldn't keep our runners out of a required Ancient Castle with Go-Go, which was a late location for some, along with a required Zone Eater check where an Illumina was conveniently in a chest whilst waiting for the Chancellor to get out of the way for the Ceiling Crusher room to pick up Gao. If you did sequence break Mount Zozo while combining it with Terra's Zozo Tower check, you could have gotten an offering from the Storm Dragon drop for Edgar using the Valiant Knife, or perhaps one of your other party members using Atma weapon from the Ancient Castle Dragon. Valiant Knife and perhaps offering went to Edgar, Terra had the Illumina or Atma weapon, and Realm used magic along with various different fourth party members for this seed between all of our runners. The returners had 6 out of the top 7 times in the seed with an average of 133.50 to the Empire's 141.09, so now 3 different eastern areas are under returners' control. Lastly, in the west is Zozo, with the Kefka unlock of 1 more character than normal, and setting the randomized Zozo clock, which we'd like to pair with doing a check from either Terra or Cyan since we're in the area, as well as a Kefka Tower skip of 2 extra characters with a random recruit for this seed being Cyan, who is replaced with the Realm sprite. One of the caveats of this flag set is a shuffled character palette, sprite, and name, so you need to know what character you've acquired based on the in-game track menu or checking out the swaps on the seed page available on our website, ff6worldscollide.com. We only start with 2 characters, but we do get the normal stat range and GP. Lots of commands are available except for Possess and Shock, and the enemy scaling is similar to Ultras League flag sets, with the exception of having the Normalize and Distort boss stats setting on, which will make the easier bosses a lot tougher and will definitely have an impact on Tier 3 of the final Kefka battle. Chests were shuffled plus 100% random. However, 5% of those chests would be traps, resulting in a random encounter. Enemy encounters had steals and drops shuffled plus 100% random, so looting and fighting would be encouraged, especially with the shops only being at shuffle plus 20% random and having a 0 GP sellback price, so you'd need to be stingy with your cash, as well as the auction house having no espers for sale. Equipment and relics had their equipables shuffled plus 15% random, so characters are not what they seem in this seed. We started with Edgar quote Lore, actually Vanilla Strago, and Jump quote Lock, aka Setzer, who had Ifrit at the Colin in check to start us off. An early economizer and returner's hideout allowed us to cast Arrow over and over and over again against any monsters lurking in chests, and conveniently Flame Eater at Ebbett's Rock, who is weak to ice, water, and wind. After exhausting all other options, including finding Katana Soul in Daryl's Tomb that was weak to Sourmouth, although you did need to throw an eye drop at him to actually hit his Slayer Edge or just wait for the dark status to go away. who dropped a bunch of money but no offering, as well as the check reward of an Aura Lance for our jumper. Burning House became the funnel for our third character, GP Rain's Celeste, actually Shadow. Lurking at the end was Tritalk, which is only weak to fire and non-elemental spells, as well as defense ignoring physical and magical attacks. Runners that did the Search the Skies check were able to use a fire spell learned from that Esper or the aforementioned Ifrit Esper summon, but others were stuck looking for super balls that were actually in World of Balance Thamasa if you did the check in that side of the world, or World of Ruin Nikeah, as well as a trade for dried meat at the Coliseum to take down the frozen chicken. Besides required progression, making it out with trickster mobs dropping up to 3 mega elixirs per flame gave us lots of security for the remainder of the seed. Steel Shadow, aka Edgar, was at Gal Manor with Sketch, quote-unquote Setzer, who was actually Celeste, in the Figaro engine room. Health, quote, Sabin, aka Terra, at the Figaro throne, provided a lot of value from Shadow, Edgar's checks, to open up our world considerably. This also meant that we could do the Zozo Tower check while getting the hints for the clock, but Doomgaze gave us our math lesson as the boss, and getting past that hurdle had our 7th character, Sabin. For those that actually wanted to grab the skip, you'd have to go to Collapsing House for Mog cosplaying as Realm, and then to Esper Mountain, where Realm Sprite was unusually giving us both our 9th character and the random Cyan that we wanted. 2 Espers at the Floating Continent, and 2 at the Magitech Factory gave us some nice spells for Celeste, while Edgar continued to use Arrow amongst those other spells, along with Lock or Lance Jump, and Shadow being the only one able to use the Illumina we found along the way, was most runners' parties for Final Kefka. You just had to remember all these aliases at the party select screen. With the top 2 times, the Empire was able to gain control of Zozo, 150-43 against the Returners' time of 152-16. Last week, the Returners swept the skirmishes, and they had a streak of 9 straight going until the Empire finally got on the board, putting a stop to the Returner dominance. Skirmishes were split this week at 4 apiece, so this puts the current war score at 327 for Returners and 271 for the Empire, but again, this only matters if we do not have a winner after our 10-week event concludes. After the second week of fighting, the Returners retained the Veld and added Doma under their control, which means 3 territories to the east, thus opening up the Eastern Empire for next week races, which has a quirk of no white or healing magic available, so stock up on those elixirs and X potions. If you've got them, don't sell them. And remember, casting spells on your elemental shield users is also a nice cure too. Meanwhile, the Empire got yet another area on the west, thus needing only 1 more to expose Figaro in the Returners base. Since there must be 1 territory from the prior week up for grabs, it's Zozo again for week 3, and hopefully it's not a really mean gated seed as this one was. Also available in the west is Jador, with tons of starting GP and buffed, albeit expensive shops, giving us an incentive to check towns over looting. This means that if the Empire can retain Zozo and capture Jador, Figaro will be a target for week 4. Other than the aforementioned Eastern Empire, in which the Empire uses their top 8 times while the Returners need 11 for the averages in that region, the last neutral zone in the east of Triangle Island will be up for grabs, with tons of character-based rewards to make the seed one of the friendlier flag sets in the tournament, so expect some pretty fast times there. Will the Empire keep up their stronghold in the south and potentially make the Returners vulnerable in week 4, or will the Returners edge even closer to victory by taking one of the base territories? Find out on next week's recap. I've been TheShwantz27. Until next time.